Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming out to Brisbane. I really love the city. It's my second time here. I was really looking forward to coming back. Unfortunately, I'll only be here for a couple of days and then moving on to Byron and Sydney. A lot of cool spots here in Australia. Thank you for coming on. Thank you, Travel by Bit, for organizing this meetup last minute. Very cool presentation. I signed up actually for Travel by Bit, and those that are watching live, the links are down in the video description. All right, how many of you is this your first Bitcoin meetup? Oh wow! All right, we're gonna have some interesting stuff to say during the panel, but I'm gonna jump right into. I'm gonna talk a little bit about price. I'm just gonna set it to screen share here, and the price is definitely moving. Looking at it right now, and we are at a new swing high. So how many of you here are traders? Oh, not that many. So how many of you recognize this thing called candlesticks? All right, more hands, excellent. Probably from watching my videos, because that's like half of it, right? So I'm not gonna get into the details. I'm just gonna quickly say that when the price is moving up, I'm expecting it to keep moving up. I need it, so right now, am I bullish or bearish? Well, if I had an active trade right now, I'd obviously be bullish. I wouldn't be trying to guess the top. We are pushing new highs, and the high for today is exactly 9,000. It looks like we are certainly going to break that, and we are gonna go higher. So we are almost at the 200-day moving average. I think we are gonna go a little bit higher. It clearly wants to go to about 9,200, and then we'll see. So I will continue to explain why I go against a couple of my friends, fundamental analysts like Willy Woo, who's very popular, who is pretty bullish, and why I'm still not ready to anticipate new all-time highs. Those of you that have seen my channel recently know that I started posting articles again. And one of the articles that I posted was the 2020 outlook. I briefly described the top things that were positive for Bitcoin from 2019, and then the 5 things that I'm expecting going into 2020. And one of the 5 things that I really liked about 2019 was the fact that Bitcoin code was very stable. There was one bug that was discovered and was fixed. It didn't cause any damage. In fact, it didn't cause any panic in the price of Bitcoin. And I don't know if enough people thought about that, right? A major theoretical vulnerability was discovered in Bitcoin. This was around September. Like, a coder changed something, then months and months later, another coder made an update, didn't realize that something was changed, another update on top of that, and you end up in a situation where you have a vulnerability. Now, when Bitcoin has a vulnerability, it's not very easy to exploit. There's a big difference between Bitcoin having a vulnerability and an altcoin having a vulnerability. Because when you have a vulnerability in an altcoin, you can kind of and you steal that value or you hack that value. Even if you could potentially destroy the altcoin, you can move that value anonymously into Bitcoin before that happens. But if you have a vulnerability in Bitcoin, it becomes very difficult to get your money out anonymously. Now with the financial markets becoming more, I guess, acceptable to Bitcoin, you have futures and other traditional derivatives where if you short, you can profit from a big crash in Bitcoin in dollar terms. It's possible, but that's still not anonymous because they will know that you profited greatly because those aren't anonymous markets. But in crypto, again, something people don't realize that you have an advantage of attacking and destroying an altcoin as long as you are capable of moving that value before the realization of the mass majority to panic. And you can get that value out through Bitcoin and stay anonymous to do it. Bitcoin, you can't do that with Bitcoin. So a major vulnerability in Bitcoin becomes a lot harder to capitalize on financially. Now, if the bad actor is a government entity, they don't care to profit financially. So in that case, that doesn't really matter. But what happened with this vulnerability was the price of Bitcoin actually went up, and noticeably, around the time of the vulnerability, and especially around the time of the fixing of that vulnerability. And you have to think a little bit as to why that happened. That happened because Bitcoin is already considered stable, secure, and very safe code. So unlike an altcoin that has a vulnerability, that usually panics the value of the altcoin, because it shows you that the developers are not as good, there could be other bugs, there could be other problems, but also because that vulnerability could be exploited and anonymously withdrawn. Even subconsciously, traders and speculators know this. But in Bitcoin, when you find and start to patch a vulnerability, it creates additional layer of confidence that, wow, I was a big fan and I was confident about Bitcoin before, but now that they fixed this major vulnerability, I should be more confident about it now. And that's another way that Bitcoin actually separates from the altcoins, and why people like me are referred to as Bitcoin maximalists. So what's another thing that I'm really happy about these days? The cost and speed of transactions. SegWit finally broke 60%. So for those that are new, while Bitcoin didn't really have a big problem with speed or the cost of transactions, at least that I felt, the network was spammed in 2017 to make it look like it's slow and expensive. And changes were made to the Bitcoin protocol to make transactions faster and cheaper. And finally, it's starting to be realized because more and more companies are eventually starting to upgrade the code. Unfortunately, it's been over 2 years since SegWit came in, and it's been about 2.5 years since we got SegWit. I believe we got SegWit in August of 2017. It's been 2.5 years, and still only 60% of the network are using the latest changes. So there's still plenty of room to go in order for transactions to be cheaper and faster, even without the need for second layer solutions. Speaking of second layer solutions, Lightning and Liquid are doing well. So the launch of Liquid as a sidechain is a major competitor to projects like Ethereum and EOS and Cardano, which hasn't even launched yet, and Tezos and many others. So that's another great development. I loved the growth in Bitcoin hash rate. That was a little bit unexpected, considering the price is still down over 50% from the all-time high 2 years ago. The amount of investment and capital going into mining and securing Bitcoin has just been, that chart has been going to the moon. And I am a little concerned going into the future, because that does imply that Bitcoin needs to get to a new all-time high relatively quickly, or some of this hash rate is going to fall off the network. And of course, one of the main rallies in Bitcoin in 2019 took place at the expense of altcoins. So people ask, what rallied Bitcoin from 3,000 to 19,000? Well, at the time it was hard to recognize, but in hindsight, for me, the majority of it wasn't because of the Ponzi scheme in China. I believe it was a massive exit out of the altcoins and into Bitcoin. Now at the moment, you are watching altcoins rise a little bit, and that's one of my concerns. So one of my outlooks for 2020 is the continued separation of Bitcoin from the altcoins. But we're not seeing that this month. This month, the altcoins are rising faster, leading people to believe that another alt season is coming. I don't believe that it is. I think that is short term, and Bitcoin will continue to outpace altcoins. I do believe that even this year, by the end of the year, Bitcoin will have a higher return than the majority or the altcoins on average, even if we're talking about, you know, top 10, top 20 altcoins. And it was this push because when Bitcoin dominance bottomed at the very top of the market, at the top of 2017, Bitcoin dominance gained from 35% to about 50%. But it did that, or maybe even a little higher. You can zoom in on the chart. But it did that in a declining environment. All throughout 2018, the price of Bitcoin was falling. It's just that the altcoins were falling faster. But in 2019, the rise in Bitcoin's dominance was at the expense of the rise of altcoins. So altcoins continued to fall a little bit, or they rose a little bit, and Bitcoin rose a lot. So there was this exit. There was this drain of capital from altcoins into Bitcoin. At the moment, we're stabilizing a little bit, and if you look at what happened, we stabilized from September up until April. And that's a good 6 months. So it's possible that the first 6 months leading into the halving, the altcoins might do fairly well, maybe outpace Bitcoin a little bit. But once Bitcoin halving comes, I think after that, there is a very high probability that Bitcoin will rise. There are a few other things that I'm looking for in 2020. I am expecting the SEC to start to be a little more comfortable with Bitcoin as an asset class now that it's 11 years old instead of like 7, 8 years old when they initially rejected the Bitcoin ETF. I think they're going to be a little more open-minded about having that Bitcoin ETF. I do think that the massive rise in hash rate without creating a new all-time high will slow down that hash rate. And privacy is coming. I'm hearing a lot less, rhetoric, use Monero, Bitcoin is not going to get privacy, because people are starting to realize that Bitcoin is on the verge of getting very good privacy that is enough for the average consumer, and it's going to be available by default in several wallets. But this brings us to my price outlook for next year in Bitcoin. And I am more of a traditional trader. Now, Bitcoin is not a traditional asset, but the people that trade Bitcoin have the same emotions of people that traded before any of us were born. That doesn't change. Human nature doesn't change. And that's why charts have repeating patterns. I'm going to clean up this chart a little bit and maybe clean it up a little bit more. And a little bit more. Let's take a look at this. And that's why my favorite way of trading is not fundamental or value investing or what Warren Buffett teaches. My favorite way of investing is using charts and technical analysis. I actually forgot to clip my mic on, but I don't know if that'll make much of a difference. My favorite way of investing is with charts and technical analysis. And one of the ways that I need to recognize that a bull market is here is a clear higher low and a clear higher high. Okay? So if we go back to the last time we had a bear market. We had a bear market. We made a nice low. We moved up quite a bit, but we never made a new high. And then we went and made a lower low. We made a lower high, and then we made a lower low. Kept making lower highs. Right here, we made a slightly higher high, not by much, a little bit. And right here, we made a slightly higher low. That is clearly a higher high than anything that happened in the entire year prior. And when we pulled back, there wasn't a very clear low, but there was a good enough low, and then there was a nice 6-month consolidation. And by this time, I was very bullish in the price of Bitcoin, looking for new all-time highs and beyond. The current environment is very challenging. We were going down for an entire year, making lower lows and lower highs. Consolidated, broke down, made that ultimate lower low. Some people can say this is a higher low. I thought it was about even. I personally felt there wasn't enough pain. I was there in this entire bear market, and there was a lot of pain. It didn't feel like there was a lot of pain here. I mean, some of the altcoins felt pain, but not the Bitcoiners. It wasn't that bad. Going from 20,000 to 3,000 wasn't good, but it didn't stay there very long, and it rebounded all the way to 14. That is a very clear high, but it's still lower high than before, and this might be a higher low if we don't go any lower. But how do we know we're not going to go lower? To me, the only way to really know that we're not going to go lower than 6,500 is by making a higher high than the last high. It's a little unfortunate for a trader like myself, like a traditional trader, that I need a higher high above 14,000 to be absolutely sure that this is a higher low, but that's the way trading is sometimes. The beauty of it is, once Bitcoin is ready to challenge the prior swing high, look what happened the last time. The last time we broke the high was $1,000. And by the end of the year, Bitcoin went from 1,000 to 20,000. So do I think we're going to have another 20x run the moment we break 20,000? That's a little lofty, right? I mean, that kind of puts Bitcoin at about $400,000 a coin or something, right? So 20x on, so you multiply by 20. 20,000 multiplied by 20, that's a lot. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the bigger the market cap, the harder it is to move. Like, it's easy for you, it's easy to move a liter of water, but a bathtub full of water, a lot harder, okay? So once we break this high, I will absolutely be bullish, but that's 14,000. I personally don't think it would be late, because when Bitcoin, the FOMO comes, it does go up a lot. For me, I just need to break the most recent high. And the most recent high was around 10,000. And we're close. We're getting there. But we're not there yet. So until we break it. And for me personally, I like breaking these things off consolidation, not after they've moved so much. So I'm still looking for one more pullback. I still think that before the halving, we are going to make one more swing low. But that view ends the moment we get above this high. So my outlook for Bitcoin at the moment, unfortunately, is a little uncertain. I am still a bear, but very slightly. I'm getting very close to turning bullish because the halving is coming. I'm expecting the low to come in before the halving. It's possible that it comes in after the halving, but it becomes a lot less likely. So people asking about percentages, I give it about a 20% chance that we're actually going to go to a significant low, back to that $3,000 to $4,000 range. I'm still at 60% that we're going to fall below 6,500 in the next few months. I still think there's one more wave down. Most people will disagree with that, and that's okay. Now, my other view is you should have always had some Bitcoin. If you're going to hold it for the longer term, it is a new asset class. So what I do with my view on prices, that's for short-term traders. For longer-term traders, and even people like myself, you got to hold on to it. You got to hold the Bitcoin, because I'm wearing a shirt that says the word unconfiscatable on it. It's the only asset humans have ever owned that's unconfiscatable. And many people have not realized the power of this property. And it's important. But as far as the short-term price goes, at the moment, for the very short term, I'm bullish because price is rising. Intermediate term, I'm still leaning bearish. But after the halving, no matter where the price is, I'm going to look for my first opportunity because after the halving, I will start to become bullish from a fundamental perspective. I just need the chart to line up. Right now, I still have a lot of concerns, and they mostly have to do with altcoins and the fact that the majority of the people don't care about Bitcoin. I see so many people that used to be in the space aren't in the space anymore. Back in the day, back when the 2014 bear market started, everyone was still a Bitcoiner. That's how you get Expedia to accept Bitcoin. That's how you get Dish Network to accept Bitcoin. Because people were way more united and getting merchants to accept Bitcoin, getting their friends to adopt Bitcoin. I haven't seen that in years. In the last 3 to 4 years, all I've seen is, oh, buy this coin because I just invented it, or buy this coin because I'm invested in it. And this fragmentation of the market has been severely holding back Bitcoin adoption. And I'm specifically talking about Bitcoin adoption, because there's not going to be crypto adoption. You don't walk into a store in Australia and they say, we accept 48 global currencies. You know, they don't. Sure, you have a credit card, so anyone from another country can come and use a credit card for convenience. But the reason the world has 100 currencies is because of force, is because of the countries, is because the country pretty much makes you use their currency. But in crypto, you don't have force. You choose what you want to use. So you have a true free market. No one forces you to use Litecoin. No one forces you to use Ethereum. No one forces you to use Monero. You choose to use them. And when people like me say, I only want Bitcoin to succeed, that's not accurate. I believe that the free market will make Bitcoin succeed, and only Bitcoin. Because in a free market, you choose the most useful, the best currency, the one that's going to be most stable, the one that is going to be a store of value, the one that has the smartest coders on it, giving you privacy, giving you scalability. And because of that, there's not going to be a need for this point of sale machine that offers you 3,000 different cryptocurrencies to use, because some of them will never be used. So that's a developmental effort to have them. So over time, I do believe that it's all going to just be Bitcoin. Maybe there'll be 1 or 2 more niche cases, but they will rotate. And eventually, the technology people are going to say, we're tired of, adding an altcoin that's popular in 2028 and then removing it in 2029 because there's another one that's becoming popular in 2029. So that's kind of my view on the future and why Bitcoin will eventually dominate. And the longer it takes for people to recognize it, the longer it will take for there to be crypto adoption. because the average consumer that is new to Bitcoin will get sold fake Bitcoin. And they already have many times. And that just turns them off from the space. So when you hear people say, well, everyone should be nicer to each other, everyone should get along, everyone should just support each other's projects, I couldn't disagree with that more. I think the space was much better in 2013, in 2014, and we had some altcoins back then, but they were seen more as a joke, more as a fun hobby. They weren't seen as people's life savings tied up in something they know is not a wise choice, but they're still trying to get others to use it. All right, I think I'm running low on time. I think it's good to kick off the panel, and there are some questions prepared, and then we'll open the floor to you guys that came out. Thank you so much. I didn't actually talk about myself, but I think everyone's familiar with my work. Check out the YouTube channel, check out vays.com, and check out the conferences that I organize. We have one in Las Vegas, for those of you that may be in the United States, in February. We have the Financial Summit, which is geared for traders and investors, and that's in Dominican Republic and in Bali, April and November. And another one that is really, really good, and that is Understanding Bitcoin. This is where the developers of Bitcoin educate people, myself included, and teach us how to properly use the Bitcoin network, how to set up nodes, how to help keep the network decentralized, how to protect your transactions, how to protect your coins. All right. Thank you so much, guys. I'm going to stop the screen share. We're going to keep the live stream going, but what I will do is just set up a screensaver from the top. But I'll give it back to Travel by Bit. Again, check out the link to Travel by Bit in the video description. Thanks, man.
Alrighty. So to start off, what do you think the main drivers for Bitcoin price moves in 2019 were, and what do you think the main drivers for the next bull market will be?
I already answered.
I think coming up next year, it's going to be political uncertainty and financial uncertainty in the world. Maybe central banks will start doing more QE. I know Australia probably definitely will. And people will start understanding that these kinds of currencies can just be printed and start seeing the difference to Bitcoin. And I think any sort of political uncertainty, like America shooting missiles at people start piling into gold, and we've seen they start piling into Bitcoin too. It's become one of those safe currencies and safe assets.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with Daniel over here. It's, you can see the price of premium in Iran, for example. I think it hit up to like $24,000 per Bitcoin at one point in time. Definitely a big driver. Like it's sad to say that the only thing that kind of like would drive people's more attention to something like Bitcoin is like they really have a bad sort of alternative to sort of chase them out of it. We hope something will be better because we believe that Bitcoin's proposition of being a store value asset, it's much stronger in the digital age than compared to gold. But unfortunately, it takes more than that to convince more people. So I do think that proposition holds.
I'll just sum up real quick. I think the biggest driver for Bitcoin going up in 2019 was that rotation out of altcoins with some institutional investment and some Ponzi scheme activity. For 2020, I think there's two main drivers, but I think they're both going to come in towards the end of the year, towards the end of 2020. One is the halving event, which means that while at the time of the halving, things can still be, traders can kind of still dominate. Going into 2021, there's definitely going to feel the fact that only 6.25 Bitcoins are being generated every 10 minutes instead of 12.5. And eventually that is going to become a factor. And I think that's going to start becoming a factor going to 2021. I also think there's going to be a little more openness from a regulatory perspective, like the SEC, saying that, yeah, maybe we'll have a Bitcoin ETF sometime this decade, and even something like that could set off a nice wave into Bitcoin. I don't see big adoption coming. I don't see a lot of merchants starting to accept Bitcoin in 2020. I just don't see it yet. But that's one of my positives. And the altcoin rotation out of Bitcoin has already kind of happened mostly. So I don't see that being the major driver as well.
Righto. So as we know, every 4 years the supply of new Bitcoins gets cut in half. It's called halving, just in case you don't know. Being that this is going to be in a couple of months, do you think this is priced in?
I guess we'll move in this direction a little bit back. So I think it's always priced in, but that doesn't mean that views can't change. We could be having this pump now going into the halving, and if we go up a little too high early, we'll still pull back one more time before the halving. I said this 4 years ago, and I'll say it again. If you're a miner in the space, you are doing everything you can, working overtime to get all of your equipment up and running now, because you know that in 4 months, that equipment is going to earn you half the profit. So you really can't take too much time and wait. So you're really trying to get all those Bitcoins, and also in order to run a smooth operation as a miner, you can't sell as much as you did before. So now you want to ration some of those Bitcoins so that after the halving, you're able to sell more than 6 1/4 per block because you sold a little bit less in the 6 months leading up to the halving to smooth out, your economic uncertainty. So from a miner perspective, that's probably what they should be doing. As far as the speculators go, everything is always priced in until it isn't. So I guess it's more of a chicken and egg answer for me.
Yeah, firstly, we call it the halvening, not the halving. It sounds more dramatic that way, like an M. Night Shyamalan movie or something. But the interesting thing about the halvening is we've only had 2 of them so far. This is the 3rd one. So we only have 2 data points in history to see what happens. In both of those cases, a few months afterwards, the price completely ran up. So will that happen again? Well, it might, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, so it's right. We don't have a lot of data points, but traditionally, you can't say the word. Historically, Bitcoin's price will be fully priced in about 14 to 16 months post-halving. And really, my point of view is that I don't think it's pricing at this point in time, because if you set aside hodlers who are already stacked up and you publish it out of the liquid market, but the rest of the liquid market is so small, right? So it's a 24/7 global market. Price discovery is happening every second, but because like Tone has mentioned earlier on the presentation, Bitcoin is really too small. So any supply shock would definitely hurt or the price or possibly in fact affect the price when it happens. So that's the reality at the moment.
Righto. What % chance do you think Bitcoin has of making a new all-time high in 2020?
I think it's pretty likely. I would say 90%. My target has always kind of been the market cap of gold, because I think that now Bitcoin has exceeded that same monetary use case that gold has. I mean, we use gold for rings and other things, but most of it is used for monetary purposes, and Bitcoin simply does it better than gold. So there's no reason it shouldn't get there. And so that's probably a 10 or 20 times from here.
Yeah, I would say I'd give it a pretty high one, but I'm very pro sort of Bitcoin, not the pro BTC kind, but actually pro Bitcoin. So I'd say that I'm a big believer that it will definitely surpass a lot of traditional sovereign asset for at least. But how long would it take for that to happen? It's a question. It just went.
As much as I would love to see a Bitcoin new all-time high tomorrow, because that would make my portfolio, my whole position look amazing. I'm not expecting a new all-time high in 2020, even with the halving. I just don't see the consumer demand. There's demand from people that are already in crypto. I just don't see new people coming into the market. Type in buy Bitcoin in Google search and look at the statistics, and they're not very good. I just don't see the masses coming in. I think if we start getting close to a new all-time high, then people will start getting interested. But I still think we're going to get stuck probably in a range. I'm looking at approximately a $10,000 price of Bitcoin at the end of the year. Now we can get there by going above 10 and spending most of the year above 10, or spending most of the year below 10. But even a month ago when Bitcoin was down at that $6,000 range, I said that I expected a $10,000 Bitcoin at the end of the year. I'm still expecting it, even though now we're at 9,000.
Cool. In Bitcoin, what topic do you think is really overhyped and possibly shouldn't even be talked about?
I'll let you guys take first.
It's probably like one thing that sort of like pet peeves me the most is people who saying that Bitcoin is bad for the environment. I don't think it is. Comparing to its sort of like, for example, gold, right? Probably a lot of people don't know like how much cyanide it takes to make a gold ring, or for example, how much water it takes to actually cut diamonds or mine diamonds. So a lot of things that people store value in today, even it actually is more poly than Bitcoin. Plus, Bitcoin is dual functionality, right? So that's the store value part, and that's the means of payments part. So like, have you ever thought of like how much environmental damage is caused by a FTOS, like sort of like tap? So the things that goes behind the central banking system, the fiat monetary, the regime that caused, has funded wars and all this kind of stuff. It's basically you can't even quantify how much damage it has done and it will continue to be doing. So I think like having a system like Bitcoin, it's a good sort of like refresh of what can be done more nicely in a way. It's more fairer and more environmentally friendly instead. It's actually the other way around.
I think what makes Bitcoin valuable is it's hard money. It's hard to make, and there's plenty of altcoins around that get too much attention, in my view. I mean, I think they are valuable in that people get to try new ideas, but the amount of money that people put in them is far too much for the benefit that they bring.
Yeah, there's actually many things. That was a good one, actually, the environmental impact. Wasn't the one I was going to say, but it's definitely a good one. I was going to say, but I didn't think of it. But that is certainly true. For me, it's like the way everyone started talking about how Bitcoin transactions are slow and expensive, and we need to have a bigger block, causing this, unnecessary hard fork and slowing down the entry of SegWit. I'm already starting to feel the same way about this crazy fear, and unnecessarily so, over quantum computers or AI. And I think that's way overblown. I think there is plenty of time to figure out solutions, and there's no need to panic and try to hard fork Bitcoin now because of it causing kind of a fork. No one's calling for that yet, but I have a feeling it's around the corner. So I think that's one of the big overblown. We were just talking with Travel by Bit about like searching, and I'm not scared of AI because no matter how many travel search sites I use, I usually can just go on my own to airline sites and I can find better routes than what these aggregate sites do. So if I can do a better job and I'm not a computer, I'm not that scared of that AI is going to take over the world. So there's a lot more work for that. Same thing with quantum computers. It's a lot of work and a lot of energy to be used for. It's something I'm not scared of, but a lot of people are already blowing it out of proportion.
Good answers. So in 50 or 100 or however many years it will hypothetically take for a Bitcoin-denominated society, do you guys actually see the majority of people running their own full nodes, or do you think it'll be mainly custodial?
I think it will be mainly custodial. I don't think everybody will be running their own full nodes. Everyone probably shouldn't be running their own full nodes. People that understand full nodes, people that would be able to, upgrade those nodes when needed, should be running them. And not everybody, but everybody will be running their Lightning nodes. I don't like calling them nodes. I would love to call it something else other than a node because it makes it sound a lot like a Bitcoin node. So I think not very few, more than today. Today we only have about 10,000 nodes. Do I think it will be more? Yes. If 1 million people actively use Bitcoin, maybe 50,000 nodes we'll have. If 50 or 100,000 nodes, and that's enough. So I'm not expecting that, but everyone will have their Lightning node in their pocket on their cell phone.
So I think the questions should also include it's not just the fact that people will be able to run node, but will the cost of running nodes stay low? Because it's very important for a network to be easily accessible by more people. It's not like I'm going to spend $10,000 in order to even spin a node, or it will become higher and higher, and essentially become just two nodes talking to each other. It becomes PayPal, right? So cost of running a node it has to be kept very low barrier. I think Bitcoin achieves that, and given that its size hasn't loaded that much compared in 11 years compared to a lot of altcoins in shorter period of time, that the decisions that Bitcoin developers and the Bitcoiners has made, and the trade-offs that have been made to maintain this has to continue over, through hyper-Bitcoinization to keep the barriers of running nodes low.
I think custodial services will always be useful because honestly, some people don't want to manage their own money. They'd rather pay an expert to do it for them, and that's a sensible choice in many cases. But it will be different to the current situation where only banks have access to the banking system. Everyone will be able to get access if they want to, and I think a lot more businesses will run nodes and get direct access to those payment rails.
Awesome. So I've got to give credit to John from Bitcoin Rapid Fire for this question, but it's a really good one. I think it had to be added in. When do you think the first central bank will add Bitcoin to its reserves, or do you think they even ever will?
I think it's more likely that, some Caribbean island central bank already has than a bank, and no central bank ever will. I think they will. I think it's possible that some already kind of have. If not, people at those banks already have. So it's a matter of time before it happens. How long? Before the end of this decade, I think we will definitely hear some countries maybe being even public about it, but you don't really want to be public about it. You kind of may just want to do it and have it as a backup. It'll more likely happen in a country that isn't as transparent in their finances, like Australia or US or some of the others. But a couple of the other countries that don't have to be as transparent with what their central bank has their money in, they are way more likely to do it earlier than the fully transparent ones, which is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I would be surprised if there's not any small countries or small governments that's been stashing Bitcoin aside. That being said, the prime motivator, I think that central banks will start adopting Bitcoin will be those that have the most to lose in the race to the bottom monetary central banking scene, which AKA is the smaller governments that are struggling to compete in a bigger scheme of things. Because if you look at the alternative, right, the ECB actually said this. Bitcoin has or could be a negative perceptual risk to the central banking system because it exposes something that they're not doing very well. So you can see that the people that want to keep their status quo do a lot to fight against that. But the flip side of things is that the smaller central banks, the smaller countries, who would actually say that, hey, if you're going to compete with the big boys, let's maybe put out a little bit of hopes here, and when Bitcoin prices goes up, that sort of whatever 5-10% allocation could become 10-20% of the risk asset, and the next wave of small countries will, hey, look, we would copy it, and it becomes a circular positive effect. And sooner or later, the big boys have to kind of like chip in and say that, okay, we can't fight this, let's be part of it. But that will take a longer time.
Central banking's fascinating. They're very conservative in some ways. From what I could find out, there's only 3 central banks at the moment that even buy shares directly. That's Japan, Switzerland, and Norway. So they're very traditional, just buy government bonds and stuff like that. But in other ways, they do crazy things like going into negative interest rates, which has never ever been done before. So it wouldn't surprise me if one of those 3 countries has already started stockpiling Bitcoin. Japan is my guess.
Alrighty. Do we think there's going to be another ICO craze or an altcoin boom?
Well, it's hard to say. I think so Jack months ago, I think he did a honey badger this year. He said that people will pay like thousands of dollars for like serial killer's hair or something on eBay. We will continue to have people valuing like non-valuable things, and it's because it's a belief system, right? So there's a lot of people who believe in something that can goes up the price. So it's hard to say. I personally wouldn't put much of my own personal money into all this kind of stuff, but to be safe, I'll just put it on Bitcoin.
Yeah, I don't think it's coming. Like, bubbles don't usually repeat. We had the tech bubble, and what happened to all of those .coms that didn't actually have a business or profits or revenues or customers? They never came back. There was never another hype. Same thing with the housing crash. Yes, the real estate market has been rising a little bit, but there hasn't really been any another crash. It's been 10 years since. So we're 2 years since the ICO. Everyone remembers it. And the regulatory environment is, they're taking it seriously now. I don't see it. I don't see another big ICO boom. It's going to be something completely different that would drive the market. I don't think it will be the ICOs, hey, you form a token. Look at what just happened with that Bitcoin hex. Richard Hart walked away with $7 or $9 million? But where's the token trading, right? Nowhere, zero, virtually, pretty much, right? So that's what's gonna happen. There are gonna be dumb people that will pile in the first week, the first month, and just hand a bunch of money to a scammer, but it's not gonna raise the market. Hex is not going to like $1 like Ripple did, right? Ripple isn't going back to $3, no matter how much they think. So I don't see it. I don't see another boom. There could be a single coin or two rising up unreasonably, but not as a whole, not market as a whole.
Yeah, I think many of us were expecting an alt season in the last few months. Whenever there's a run up in the Bitcoin price, all the altcoins are quickly behind it, but it didn't really kind of happen this time, so hopefully not.
Righto. So one final question before we open it up to the floor. One thing I didn't mention before the start of this, Daniel is CEO of Wallet of Satoshi and Living Room Satoshi, and Jeff is the head of the Binance Lite in Australia. So if we could just get a round of applause for these two, that'd be great. So yeah, one final and very crucial question before we open it up to you guys. Is Craig right, Satoshi?
Judging by the response, I think everyone knows the answer. My answer is definitely no.
I don't think there's evidence to convince me one way or the other yet.
Oh, I am very certain it's no. Did you guys see that picture when I was sitting next to him on a panel? We were all Satoshi except for Craig, right? Like, the easiest way to know he's not Satoshi, I can probably pull it up. I think I have a picture saved. I think it was in my other phone. Like, he deleted his Twitter account not that long ago. But I have a screenshot of an old tweet of his from about a year ago, where he says that a 56K modem can download, I think he said, I forgot the exact numbers, like a 32 megabyte block in under 10 minutes. And someone replied, no, Greg, that will take over an hour. And he's like, no, that'll take 9 minutes. And he's in an argument, and then you realize he doesn't know the difference between a byte and a bit. And I really think Satoshi would have known that.
Awesome. Righto, so does anyone have any questions they want answered? I'll run the mic to you. Surely. Don't be shy. My question is, how do you think a recession will affect, I guess, the space, the crypto space?
Well, that's a good question. I've gotten that one a couple of times. You know, it depends on, it really depends on the recession. If it's a deep, serious recession, like in 2008, I think it's going to hurt the crypto space a lot. If it's something minor, then it could actually help, but it will still, I'm still going to lean towards hurt. People don't realize how much Bitcoin has benefited from this 10-year bull market, mostly in the US and pretty much in Europe as well for most of those 10 years. The global bull market over the last, actually more than 10 years now, we're now looking at almost 12 years of a bull run since the lows of 2009. That's been incredibly beneficial. Bitcoin is a speculative asset. If you have no money and you're barely, paying your bills, you don't have any money to put into Bitcoin. You want economic prosperity so that you're more likely to have access money, extra money. And instead of, going out to another fancy dinner, you're considering putting some of that extra money into Bitcoin. You want that guy at Goldman Sachs to get a $3 million bonus because there's a good chance he might throw some decent amount of money into Bitcoin and help drive the price of Bitcoin. A lot of people thought that their gold would skyrocket if there was an economic panic. Then why did gold fall 33% in 2008? When the stock market fell 50%, gold fell 33%. Sure, it beat the market, but it still fell 33%. And that's because if you lost your job, if the system is breaking down, and you have gold, but you gotta eat, you're gonna be selling that gold. So if you have Bitcoin and a family, and you lost your job because of an economic downturn, how long are you gonna, and your wife knows you have Bitcoin, how long are you gonna tell her that you're not gonna sell it to feed the family, right? To hold on to it for a long time as it's going down in price because others in your position are selling their Bitcoin, to buy things. So I think a serious recession would hurt. I don't want to take up too much time, but what would help is uncertainty and fear. So my two biggest ones, one of them is, for example, the breakup of the euro common currency. Or an imminent, breakaway of a country within the euro, potentially causing this domino. Because if Greece is about to get kicked out of the euro, like they almost had the situation, I mean, the people in Greece have no money. Their banks are shut down. The government is telling them you can only withdraw 20 euros per day from an ATM. Greeks aren't going out and buying Bitcoin, right? If you're only allowed to withdraw 20 euros from the bank, what are you going to use those 20 euros on? I can guarantee you it's not going to be to buy $20 worth of 20 euros worth of Bitcoin. You're going to use it to buy some food or other things. But the neighboring countries, Spain, Italy, Portugal, they're going to be like, do you see what's going on in Greece? That can be here tomorrow. So while I have access to my money, I'm going to move it to something other than the banking system. So these are the kinds of things that could potentially drive Bitcoin up. But an actual economic serious recession, that's going to be bad for Bitcoin, in my opinion.
Yeah, I fully agree with Tom. Like, a regional recession would probably, like I said, cause more people to sort of flock into Bitcoin. Because that's pretty much how I knew about Bitcoin in the first place, because of the 2013 Cyprus build-up. Because before that, I didn't know that like the government can just take people's money away from their savings account. I'm like, holy shit, like if this can happen there, it can happen here as well. So that's like, if that converted me into a Bitcoiner, like something like that would have converted more people, I would assume. So if it's say that it's not the end of the world, we still have time. So yeah.
It's okay. Another question.
I think we've got a question from Caleb. So.
Question for Daniel. So wallet Satoshi's Bitcoin Lightning wallet, it's been out for a few months now. Can you tell us a little bit more about the traction? Is there any growth? Is there usage in Lightning? Who's using it? And anything interesting about the adoption of the Lightning wallet?
Yeah, Lightning's fascinating because it's a payment system that Bitcoin always needed. So Visa, it's like Visa is on top of the Australian dollar, Lightning is on top of Bitcoin. So we've only had it out for less than a year now, but we've done nearly 500,000 Lightning transactions. Of course, they're instant, low fees, and it's really the way payments should be, and the kind of payments that people expect after using systems like Visa. But the difference is it's built on sound money, and that is a huge difference.
Just a follow-up question. So how many downloads now? It's in like which countries do you see people using Lightning? Is there any stats?
I have to get my stats guy up there. What do you reckon? I think we've had about 10,000 wallets downloaded, but we're seeing it in a lot of countries like the South American countries where the currency is in crisis and people are finding it hard to use it as a payment system. The fact that you can just download it and use it straight away, you don't have to register or anything, makes it very easy to use. And people in those sort of countries, Bitcoin is actually a more stable currency than the local one. So I think that's where we're going to see those sort of payment systems start. And we just really use it for fun here in Australia at the moment, but we will see it go global, I think.
Okay. I just want to comment a little bit. I can't wait for Lightning adoption. I think it's going to be great, but one of the things that people underestimate that Lightning will bring is that Lightning, all these Lightning channels, Lightning wallets, they're denominating everything in Satoshis. And when everyone starts actually using Lightning, it's going to be really awesome because now, slowly over time, people are going to start thinking about Bitcoin in terms of Satoshis. And one Satoshi is really, really cheap, right? Like one Ripple is really, really cheap, right? Like one Hex is really, really cheap. And eventually, it'll just be, everything will be in Satoshis. And it'll be a lot easier to, because every time your friend says, I don't want to buy Bitcoin, one Bitcoin's too expensive, but one Satoshi isn't. So the more people start using Lightning, the more they start thinking about it in Satoshis. And that could be very, very big for adoption because people are going to be more likely to buy into it because they're not thinking of it as a $9,000 Bitcoin. And that's in US dollars, right? Like in Australian dollars, you guys are probably what, 13,000, 12,000? Something like that, right? So that's another subtle side advantage to Lightning adoption. It's general Bitcoin adoption.
Yeah. Speaking about sats, so everyone knows sats is short for Satoshi, 100 million of Bitcoin. So it's I really like the idea of pricing things in sats. I can tell you how much 1 AED can buy you in sats today. It's just shy of 8,000 sats. So if you flip that perspective, if I spend 1 AED, I can get almost 8,000 units of this thing called Bitcoin. It changes the perspective. And I created a Twitter bot just for that, so it gives daily updates of how much sat can you get per 1 unit of fiat currency every day.
One other interesting thing is that you can now go directly from fiat currencies like the Australian dollar straight onto the Lightning network, so bypassing the Bitcoin blockchain completely. So still utilizing the security of the blockchain, but straight into that payment system. So it's something that we just didn't expect a couple of years ago, and it's here. It's ready to use.
Right on. I think we can all agree Lightning Network is something to look forward to taking off. Do we have any more questions from the crowd? Cardio?
I was just wondering what you guys' thoughts are on Tether, and where you think that's going to be at the end of the year. Mostly around how it's not transparent, which is something that we all love about.
Well, we're gonna find out how transparent it is, right? The U.S. Attorney General is looking into this for us, right? And so we'll find out. At the end of the year, one Tether will still be $1. Clearly, it's right now, and it's only 75% backed by Bitcoin. So clearly, the community doesn't really care. It's more important that Tether remains $1 because everyone wants it to remain $1. So even if the U.S. government goes and confiscates, all of the underlying dollars underlying Tether, it's possible that the community, the exchanges get on the phone and like, this Tether thing is really useful. Let's lock this thing down. Let's lock down the protocol. Let's make sure Tether can't print any more Tether because now it's not backed anymore. Tether, the company, doesn't even exist. But the tokens are out there. The tokens are on the liquid sidechain of Bitcoin now. It's pretty decentralized. You can't stop that token. Let's just all agree that one Tether equals $1. Like, who cares if it's backed or not? It's useful. We can move something that's stable, right? So stability of a Tether token doesn't necessarily have to come with full underlying. Because like I said, even before this incident, the fact whether one Tether is or isn't fully underlined by a dollar is almost irrelevant. Because even if there was a full audit and each Tether was underlined by a dollar, it doesn't mean that the next day those dollars can't be confiscated by the government, right? So it's almost irrelevant. Like, as long as the community agrees that it should be worth $1, it'll be worth $1. And do I think that they're printing Tether out of thin air? I don't. I mean, look, they're under scrutiny by the US federal government. They're already potentially facing serious legal consequences. So why on earth they're going to be printing 9 million Tethers out of thin air? The way it works is there's a huge demand for Tether. Bitfinex, the company, they're the creators of Tether. So what happens is they go and they buy, and people send them money because their users don't want the volatility of Bitcoin, so they're moving Tether to other exchanges. So when you move your Tether to another exchange, Bitfinex loses that Tether. But they're gaining fiat, and then they just move that fiat into the bank account and create Tether. So I don't think Tether is that malicious. Is it good for the system or bad? I don't know. Like, eventually, there won't be a need for it. Eventually, Bitcoin will become a store of value. Well, Satoshi will become a store of value. These stable coins were never really that interesting to me. They're useful. Just make sure you're not holding it. You trade somewhere, either hold the Bitcoin yourself or trade with an exchange that will hold US dollars for you, not Tether, because one magic day you're gonna wake up and Tether is gonna be, selling at 3 cents on the dollar, and you want someone else holding that bag, not you.
Yeah, I like what you said. They're not that interesting. They sound interesting, a stable cryptocurrency, but in reality, it's very reminiscent of what happened to the US dollar in the last 100 years. I mean, it was originally backed by gold. You could go and convert your US dollars for gold at the bank. Then they just turned it off for normal people, and then gave 40 years to get people used to that. And then in 1971, turned it off for everybody. And now it becomes a completely different thing. And that exact same thing could happen to Tether.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about that, but I think that because majority of the money in the world are still in fiat. So our biggest problem now is not to worry about whether Tether is actually 100% back, 75% back, or something like that, because there are competitor to Tether as well. So if people feel like the counterparty risk on Tether is too high, they can move to like BUSD or USDC or something like that. But the thing that stablecoin solves is a liquidity and also a sort of safe sort of feeling. So like those kind of kiddie pools, like you can't just throw people into the pool and expect them to swim in.
Sorry, I think we all know why they use it. The problem is, the reality is that if someone is printing them, it's not about whether or not it's backed or not backed. If someone is inflating it, that's the thing. If the inflation is done by a bad actor that's outside of both the Bitcoin system, which is done through, it's decentralized, or it's not through the traditional markets where the people are being held accountable, it's essentially offshore in Cyprus, who knows where, then the reality is they can keep printing and printing and printing and pumping up the price of Bitcoin, and then all the charts that you're making of where these things lie really aren't necessarily at the control of just people buying it.
I don't believe that's true. I don't believe that's true, because we heard this in the 2017 bull market. Tether is being printed, pumping the coins, but if that was true, then we would have never had an 80% correction in 2018. So I don't believe that they're being printed, A, maliciously, or B, for the sole purpose of pumping the price of Bitcoin. I don't believe that. Now, I could be proven wrong.
Manipulate the price of Bitcoin. A trader like yourself should know that those people would easily be able to short, play the downside as much as they could play the
Do I think people at Bitfinex do I think people at Bitfinex have an advantage of knowing when they're going to create that tether? Yes, but do I think that tether itself is being printed for the sole purpose of manipulation? The answer is I don't think so.
But do you think that, so you admit that Tether does affect the price of Bitcoin, there's no transparency.
But everything affects the price of Bitcoin. Like me having a YouTube channel affects the price of Bitcoin, but not to the extent to create conspiracy theories.
That's not a conspiracy theory. How many the Binance do? How much of the transaction? How much of the actual trading that goes on in Bitcoin is done to USDT? The majority. It's a huge part of all of this.
Well, there's demand. There's demand for it, right? I mean, like, I've seen Tether trade more than $1. If they're printing unlimited amount of Tether, why is their Kraken even allows you to trade Tether for US dollars, right? They're giving you a market.
I could jump on there and buy one right now for $1.03 and it would move the market.
No, I'm just saying that there's clearly Bitfinex is not printing Tether fast enough because people are willing to pay more than $1 for a Tether that's backed 75%, right? It's like the US government. Clearly the US government isn't printing fast enough because the US dollar is still, somewhat appreciating against other fiat currencies. Like if the market has a demand for it, you have a company that is doing it, but they're not getting rich off of it. Maybe there is some guy that, someone with a low salary at Bitfinex that kind of knows, hey, they're about to print and the price of Bitcoin is going to go up, but that's because there's demand. And Bitfinex has that mechanism. There's a bunch of them. I don't believe it's being done to pump the price of Bitcoin because then the price of Bitcoin would never go down. And we just saw it go down from 14,000 down to 6.5.
I just touched on this. It's about they're manipulating it. It's not about just pumping it. It's about manipulation of the price.
But
the majority of the volume is being done through Tether.
Because there's demand.
Who controls who's printing it?
There's demand.
There's demand for Tether.
Yes.
I'm not doubting that, but if I can print some, if whoever has it can print it whenever they want, how do you know?
But it's not whenever they want.
That's not demand. That's someone printing.
But they're not printing. Well, they can print it as long as they're moving fiat to back it into a bank account.
That's the problem. The fiat isn't being audited. Like you're saying, it's 75% back, and that was the last time they checked. Now it could be 60. Now it could be 40. How do you know? No one knows.
Well, we're gonna know, right? Because the U.S. Attorney General is looking into it. We're gonna find out.
That day comes.
Well, my other issue is.
The whole point of Bitcoin is not to rely on that.
So let me ask you a question. Everyone is mad at me for being a bear.
I'm not mad at you at all.
No, in general, right? So people are mad at me for being a bear because I think the price of Bitcoin is going to go down. And at the same time, everyone is accusing Tether of pumping the price of Bitcoin. So would you rather, so by default, if Tether didn't exist, that means the price of Bitcoin would be significantly lower. Like, it's like this giant contradiction. It's like people are mad at the Federal Reserve for causing the stock market to go up, mostly because they didn't want to invest in the stock market the last 10 years. So now they're upset that the government, who actually wants the stock market to go up because everyone kind of benefits. You know, if the stock of your company goes up, your company's doing well, everyone is kind of better off.
Alright, we're going to move on to the next question.
Yeah. So it's a weird scenario. Like, you gotta live with it. You gotta just you gotta be okay with it. And if you feel that Tether is constantly rising the price of Bitcoin, then buy more Bitcoin and take advantage of it.
Alright, you guys must work for Peter Schiff. Anyway, do we have any more questions? Down the front, row. I think this might be one of our last ones. Yep.
Hi, I have a question. I hope it's not a heated question, but what is your opinion on how the FATF travel rule can affect the adoption of cryptocurrencies?
I'll take it. I don't know how they're going to enforce it because I can keep my Bitcoin in my head. So I don't know how the travel rule is going to enforce it. You know, just be careful traveling with your Trezor. Try to, you know, have wallets on your phone that you can just delete and then reinstall. Because there's this weird thing, right? Like, for example, I have my banking app on my phone. So if I have my banking app on my phone and I'm traveling, and my bank has more than $10,000 in it, I can access that money through my app. Does that mean I'm in violation of crossing the border with more than $10,000 because I can access it through an app? Well, Bitcoin is supposed to work the same way. It's an app. The Bitcoin is not in the phone. The Bitcoin is in the Bitcoin blockchain. It's distributed through all the nodes. Just because I have an app on my phone that gives me access to this kind of value, it doesn't mean that, like, I have it on me, like cash. So a lot of these, like, laws are outdated, right? Like, these laws came in, like, before electronic banking, like before we had smartphones, and they don't make sense at all. And in crypto, good luck enforcing. I mean, some people are going to get caught, and they may have to go to court and argue that, well, I don't actually have the Bitcoin. It's in, you know, everyone. Like, it's there. I just have access to it. So it's going to be strange. Just, you know, be aware that anytime you cross a country, don't cross the country with more than X amount, and, you know, be smart about it.
Yeah, I think that people should be too scared of regulation and compliance in the crypto space because, like, it's like I think I wrote a tweet a while ago. It's like a war of Bitcoin is actually good for Bitcoin long term because it exposes security vulnerabilities, bad offset practices, all this, you know, custodial changes and stuff like that. It puts the system to the test and, you know, exposes and teaches people about vulnerability before it's too late. So I think exchanges will have to be compliant for all these reasons. But if you're a, you know, hard one, like Tom said, it's hard for you to sort of enforce a policy to stop Tom from bringing, you know, Bitcoin overseas because technically there is no Bitcoin.
Does anyone answer that?
It just reminds me of a similar rule that's coming into Australia soon. That's the $10,000 cash rule. So countries are trying to stop people from using cash. It's very clear they want people to do that because cash is a lot like Bitcoin. It's a bearer asset, you own it, and it can't be tracked. So it has a lot of implications about people moving their money, more of their money into the banking system and being able to be tracked. And that makes all these new privacy technologies that are coming into Bitcoin very interesting too this year. If you're not following along, have a look at Schnorr and Taproot and the privacy enabling consequences that they bring for Bitcoin. But there's a lot of exciting things happening this year.
And this crackdown on cash is, awesome for Bitcoin. Right? Like the more governments enforce AML KYC laws, the more they try to ban cash. This $10,000, well, it's like every year your fiat becomes less and less valuable. And like in Australia, it's 10,000 Aussie dollars, not 10,000 US dollars. So now it's only 7,000 US dollars. And 7,000 today buys you a lot less than it did 10 years ago. It's getting to a point where they really do want to eliminate cash. And the elimination of cash is incredible for Bitcoin. I mean, everyone will just be using Bitcoin if there's no cash. It's awesome. I saw the same thing with Nouriel Roubini when it was at a conference, and he's like screaming, governments are bad. They're supposed to have implemented -5 or -10% interest rates by now, force people to spend. And I'm like laughing. I'm like, please implement a -10% interest rate at the bank. Like, just please do it, because everyone's going to go into Bitcoin.
Alrighty, I think we'll end that there. Just one thing before we wrap up. Travel by Bit is always looking for talented people to join the team, and we are actually offering a $1,000 in Bitcoin, and that's not Bitcoin SP. Reward for anyone who could successfully refer a developer that we hire. So just keep that in mind. Talk to any of us, we're pretty cruisy. But can I get a round of applause for these three guys?